everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. On this episode, I'm going to keep it real and I'm going to keep it trill with you guys because that's what JT Sports is all about, giving you raw, uncut, and unbiased takes on the NFL and college football. And it's extremely ironic to me how Steelers fans continue to call for Mike Tomlin to get fired. His nickname is Mediocre Mike, as what they like to call him, due to the Steelers going nearly a decade without a playoff win. And the main reason why Mike Tomlin has been unable to win a playoff game recently is because he goes into these postseason games going up against teams that have Thanos at quarterback while he has to win with Hawkeye at QB. And it's unrealistic to expect for Mike Tomlin to win against Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson with Mason Rudolph and the washed Russell Wilson. So it makes no sense how Steelers fans are buying into this delusion that Will Howard is the franchise quarterback in waiting. He's going to be the guy to be able to get the Steelers to another Super Bowl when you're playing in a conference that's home to gods at quarterback. The AFC is like the DC universe. You're going up against Superman, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter. You're not going to be able to beat a Lamar, Mahomes, Josh Allen with a guy like a Will Howard. Will Howard is a 6th-round pick, which means that the probability of him turning into an elite quarterback is less than 3%. It already is hard enough to find a competent quarterback in the draft, especially if you're picking one in the first round. You have a higher chance of drafting Kenny Pickett or Anthony Richardson in the first round than you do of finding the next Mahomes or Lamar. And as you go round by round, the chances of you landing a starting quarterback decrease. And essentially, if you believe that Will Howard is the future at quarterback for the Steelers, essentially you're saying that he's going to be an all-time outlier. Because outside of Brock Purdy and Tom Brady, it's hard to strike gold at quarterback in terms of finding a competent starter in day 3 of the draft. And even if Will Howard ends up being serviceable, he is very limited in terms of his ceiling. At best, you get Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott. That's not going to get you to another Super Bowl. Why is it that the Steelers fan base claims they're tired of accepting mediocrity from Mike Tomlin, but yet they want to give him mediocrity at quarterback and expect him to win with that? The Steelers shouldn't be okay with having Will Howard at quarterback when they can go out and they can do a lot better. If you are going to get a quarterback, you need to get you one that has the physical capabilities of the other ones that continue to dominate the AFC. The future at quarterback for the Steelers wears number 16 for South Carolina. His name is Lenore Sellers. That's who the Steelers need to be trading the farm up to get in the 2026 NFL draft if he declares. Because more than likely, nobody's going to be giving up the first overall pick to get Arch Manning if he declares. And Garrett Nussmeier could be pretty good. I don't want Drew Aller. Cade Klubnik more than likely won't be available either because he'll be a top 3 pick. So realistically, Lenore Sellers is the best option for the Steelers at quarterback. Now, if they can't get their hands on Lenore Sellers and they got to settle for Carson Bagg, somebody to that degree, then okay, run it with Will Howard for at least a season. Let's see what he has. But the Steelers shouldn't be okay with tolerating the bare minimum. You can't expect Mike Tomlin to win a playoff game with the lowest hanging fruit at quarterback. It's incredibly disingenuous to get mad at Mike Tomlin for being unable to have success in the playoffs when you're giving him nobody that's relatively good compared to guys like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. What the hell do you want Mike Tomlin to do? And even though Will Howard won a national championship, that doesn't mean that equates to him having a high ceiling in the NFL. Mac Jones won a national championship at Alabama. He wasn't good. Tim Tebow won a national championship at Florida. He's one of, if not the most accomplished quarterback in the history of college football. And look how his career panned out. Winning a national championship doesn't define how good you're going to be in the NFL. There are multiple different reasons why quarterbacks win a national championship in college. Stetson Bennett won a national championship back-to-back, by the way, at Georgia, and he's buried on the Rams depth chart. We all but forgotten about Sir Stetson Bennett. Why? Because if you have a great team around you in college, anybody can win a national championship. So this delusion that Steeler fans have about wanting Will Howard to get an opportunity because he's getting mentored by Aaron Rodgers is essentially you saying that you just want to continue to give Mike Tomlin whatever at quarterback just so you can continue to complain about why he can't get it done in the postseason. The difference between the Steelers losing in the playoffs to Baltimore wasn't because Mike Tomlin is mediocre. It's because he had mediocrity that he was giving that quarterback going up against an alien on the other sideline. Do you guys not remember when Josh Allen ran over the entire Steelers defense for a 50-yard touchdown? These are the kinds of quarterbacks that Mike Tomlin has to beat with a Mason Rudolph, a Kenny Pickett, a Mitchell Trubisky. Now you want to give him Will Howard and expect him to win with that? What truly do you guys want as a fan base? Because I'm lost. Do you want to win another Super Bowl or not? Do you? Because Will Howard is not going to be the guy that get the Steelers there. You have a 3% chance of Will Howard turning into a capable quarterback, and that's what you want Mike Tomlin to win with? Some of you guys are incredibly unreasonable with your expectations for Mike Tomlin. You give him the worst of the worst to pick from that quarterback and say, yeah, we want you to beat the best teams with the best quarterback with that. Where's the logic in that? Where's the fairness in that? There seems to be no fairness with how we view Mike Tomlin. Even when you think of the last days of Big Ben, I saw Colin Cowherd talk about how the Steelers defense is so expensive and never plays up to the amount that the Steelers are spending on that side of the ball. He wants to throw up the graphics of the amount of points that the Steelers have given up in their last few playoff games, when in Big Ben's final 2 playoff games against the Jaguars, he fronted them 14 points. Against the Cleveland Browns, he had like 4 turnovers by himself alone. Hell, the first play of the Steelers offense in that Browns loss in 2020 was a fumble in the end zone that gave the Browns 6 points. What's the Steelers defense supposed to do to overcome all of Big Ben's turnovers? There's no fairness when it comes to Mike Tomlin. And now you want to give him Will Howard? You want him to win against Lamar, Josh Allen, Mahomes, Justin Herbert with Will Howard? Are you insane? Do you want the Steelers to win? The standard is the standard. And the standard not just has fallen with the expectations for this team, but the expectations for what fans think is good enough to win a Super Bowl at quarterback. It is 2025, people. It's not 2002. It's not 1995. You just can't put me and you back there at quarterback and think that's going to be good enough for you to win the Super Bowl when you're in a conference that's home to gods at quarterback. I don't care what any of you guys say. The Chiefs are not coming out of the AFC this year. I'm tired of hearing, oh, it's delusional to count out the Kansas City Chiefs. Every time you write the Kansas City Chiefs off, they always end up proving you wrong. History does not define future outcomes. Eventually, the Chiefs are going to cool off, and they're going to have a stretch when they are out of the championship conversation. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, as dominant as what they were, they weren't dominating the NFL for 2 consecutive decades. You didn't see the Patriots with Tom Brady in the Super Bowl every single year in his career. It is delusional to think that Kansas City is going to win the AFC for as long as Mahomes plays quarterback. This is not Madden. This is real life. Stop comparing what the AFC West used to be to what it is now, because this division is completely different. I don't get why there is so much short-sightedness to what the AFC has become now. You are in a division with 4 elite coaches, 3 future Hall of Famers, 3 head coaches in the AFC West that the Chiefs are going against have won Super Bowls. Sean Payton, Pete Carroll, Andy Reid is now included in that, and Jim Harbaugh is one of the greatest football coaches in the last decade in terms of what he's done in the NFL and college. The AFC has never been more stacked. You got to go up against that young legend out of Pompano, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Eventually, these guys are going to break through because they are too good not to. I'm not saying that the Chiefs dynasty is about to fall off. What I'm telling you is that at least from this season until 2028, the Chiefs are not going to continue to dominate the AFC. What is so unreasonable about that? What is so delusional about that? Counting out the Chiefs this year is not delusional. It's just fair, because you cannot continue to expect for Kansas City to dominate this conference. And you keep saying we do this every year. No, we don't. The Chargers had Brandon Staley in years past. Jim Harbaugh is not Brandon Staley. Sean Payton is not Nathaniel Hackett. Pete Carroll is not Antonio Pierce. The Chiefs were dominating a division that was home to some of the worst head coaches in the NFL, with some of the worst quarterback play in this league. This conference, this division has completely flipped. I don't know if Chiefs fans keep up with the other moves that the teams in the division make, but they seem not to, because they still think that the Chargers are the same team that they were 8 years ago. Same thing with everybody else. The Chiefs and the Broncos, right? They had some really close games last year. It came down to a blocked field goal, and the Broncos had an over-under win total of 5.5 last year. They were not expected to even sniff the playoffs. Same thing with the Los Angeles Chargers. So if those teams were coming close to beating you with rosters that were nowhere as good as what yours were and didn't have high expectations, imagine what they're going to be this year now that they have more pieces, now that they have improved their teams. The Raiders are going to be a scrappy team. Hell, they almost beat you on Black Friday last year if it wasn't for botch snap by the center to Aiden O'Connell. The AFC West has caught up to the Kansas City Chiefs. And Chiefs fans can continue to play these mental gymnastics about, oh, well, we dominate this division for every single year. Bro, this is a completely different division now. Stop telling me what you did in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020. It's 2025. Pete Carroll wasn't coaching the Raiders in 2020. He was coaching the Seahawks. Sean Payton was coaching the Saints in 2020. Jim Harbaugh was at Michigan in 2020. Why are people stuck in the past about Kansas City? Stop judging the AFC West. Stop judging the AFC based off what's happened in years past, and judge this conference, judge the Chiefs' opposition by what's in front of them. And what's in front of them is about to be a wake-up call that, okay, we are about to witness a slowdown. I'm not saying that the Chiefs and Mahomes are never going to win another Super Bowl. I guarantee they will win at least 2-3 more before Patrick Mahomes retires. But what I'm telling you is that they will have a cool-off period. And that cool-off period starts this year. And you can play these games about how, oh, well, you want to say that Lamar Jackson's going to get it done? What has Lamar Jackson ever done in the playoffs? Just because Lamar Jackson hasn't done his big one yet doesn't mean it's never going to happen. Lamar Jackson is the most talented quarterback to ever put his hands on the football. He's like Tom Brady throwing the ball, and he runs that football like he's Barry Sanders. Lamar Jackson is too talented to not break through. Hell, Joe Burrow broke through. If the Bengals can beat you, anybody can beat you. You can't judge the future of the league based off history. History doesn't win football games. And I get it if you want to say, well, until proven otherwise, I'm not betting against Kansas City. That's you. I'm betting against Kansas City. I am. Eventually, Josh Allen, Lamar, somebody else is going to break through, and how somebody in their division might break through. Jim Harbaugh, in his first 4 years coaching the San Francisco 49ers, went to 3 straight NFC championship games and a Super Bowl. Sean Payton has won a Super Bowl before. Pete Carroll has won a Super Bowl before. You are not in the weakest division in the NFL anymore. You have 4 other future Hall of Fame coaches that Andy Reid is going up against. And you're not going to be beating them the way that you have in years past because the coaching has improved. Stop telling me about how you've dominated a weak division for nearly a decade. This division is not weak anymore. I am so freaking tired of hearing that nonsense. Do you guys keep up with the head coaching moves, or do you just keep your head stuck up you know what, focusing on what the Chiefs do? Because it seems like Chiefs fans are stuck in this bubble where they just ignore everything else that's going on, and they try to make like all the changes that these teams make are the same changes that they made years ago. Jim Harbaugh's not Brandon Staley, man. Put some respect on Jim Harbaugh. I'm tired of y'all trying to overlook some of the additions that these teams are making just to ignore the fact that your division is no longer easy like what it used to be. Let's wake up, people. The Broncos and the Chargers have just as good as a chance to win the AFC as what Kansas City does this year. Let's wake up. It is not delusional to count out the Kansas City Chiefs. Somebody else other than Patrick Mahomes is going to be representing this conference in the Super Bowl this year. I guarantee it. Watch. This is the most pivotal season of Bryce Young's career because this is a proven season for him. This is the season that Bryce Young shows the Carolina Panthers organization that he has what it takes to lead this franchise for the next decade. And not only is this a make-or-break season for King Bryce, but this is also a season that the Carolina Panthers are going to need him to be Mr. Perfect. He has to play at an MVP level for the Carolina Panthers to have a shot of making it to the playoffs, because the Panthers defense is not that better entering this season as what it was last year. And last season, the Panthers had a historically bad defense. They were god-awful against the run, giving up nearly 200 yards on the ground per game, and their pass defense was not that better. So essentially, the Carolina Panthers need Bryce Young to play like how Joe Burrow did last season, where he has to throw for nearly 40 touchdowns, only 5 or 6 interceptions, and he has to will the Carolina Panthers on his back to wins, because this is not a good enough defense for the Panthers to survive unless their offense averages 35 points per game, because this defense is not that good. The defensive line has gotten slightly better. You do get a healthy Derek Brown back. You did sign guys like Treshaun Ward in. You drafted Cam Jackson in the 5th round, who I really like a lot. You get Bobby Brown III, who's going to help improve your run defense as well on the defensive line. Pat Jones is coming off a breakout season in Minnesota with 7 sacks. But your linebackers still aren't that good. And you still have one of the worst, if not the worst, secondary in the NFL. We know that J.C. Horn is a dog at corner. But who else is lining up at corner beside him? Because their cornerback 2 spot is a huge mystery. And same thing with slot corner. And yes, they did add 2 new safeties, signing Trevon Moehrig in free agency, and they drafted Latham Ransom out of Ohio State. But both of those guys are run-stopping safeties. They are not good in pass coverage. As a matter of fact, Moehrig was a liability in pass coverage for the Raiders. That's why they didn't retain him. And Latham Ransom gave up a lot of big plays during his time at Ohio State. The Carolina Panthers secondary is going to be like an all-you-can-eat buffet for opposing quarterbacks because they're going to be able to throw for as many yards as what they want to boost their stats when they see how weak this Panthers secondary is. The Panthers failed to address one of the biggest holes that they had going into this offseason, which was their lack of a proven true number 2 corner. Imagine if you had J.C. Horn lining up against another really good corner. They don't. So with that, you're putting a lot of pressure on this revamped defensive line to be good at getting after the quarterback. And you're putting a lot of pressure on the rookies that you drafted. Princely, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name out of Ole Miss, but he was really good at Ole Miss. But how good is he going to be right out the gate as a 3rd-round pick? How good is Nick Scourton going to be? Your 2nd-round pick out of Texas A&M. You need both of these guys to come right out the gate and play at a high level. You need at least 8 sacks or more out of both of these guys. And it is unrealistic to expect 2 rookies to carry your pass rush. The Carolina Panthers, defensively, they don't have enough to be a playoff team this year. You are going up against the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have 2 of the most explosive passing attacks entering this season. Michael Penix, in his final 3 games as Atlanta's starting quarterback, he led the NFL in yards per pass, and he also had the highest amount of plays that went for more than 15 yards plus. Bryce Young, for the Panthers to be in the playoffs come January, he has to be Mr. Perfect. If there ever was a season for Bryce Young to prove that he was worthy of the Panthers trading up the farm to draft him 1st overall, this is the year, because this is the year that Bryce Young needs to look like a 1st overall pick. He has to be able to carry this franchise on his back. The notion that we don't need Bryce Young to be good, we just need him to be okay. No, you need Bryce Young to be great this season. If your goal is that the Panthers make it to the playoffs this year, if the Panthers are going to be a double-digit win team and they got to go up against teams like the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen at quarterback, Bryce Young needs to look elite. He needs to play at a top 10 level or better. He needs to play like how Joe Burrow did, because this Panthers offense, which is lock and loaded, they've given Bryce Young an army on offense. Nobody can deny that. Tech McMillan should be a really good addition to this unit. Xavier Legette, I've seen his brother in everything during the offseason, from hockey games, Glorilla music videos. I'm just wondering how improved he's going to be, because he's been more of a celebrity this offseason than he has been a football player in my eyes. So I'm hoping that he has a breakout season in year 2. You got Jatavian Sanders. You got Chuba Hubbard, the Chuba train at running back, and you have one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. Bryce Young has enough on offense to where they can at least put up 28 points per game or better, and that's what's going to be required, and then some, for Carolina to be a playoff team. This defense is not that good. Are they going to be as bad as what they were last year? No, which you can say is improvement. But when you have a defense that was one of the worst in the history of the NFL, some improvement still isn't enough improvement to be a capable football team. And you essentially are the NFC version of what the Cincinnati Bengals were last season. It's going to take a Herculean effort out of Bryce Young and Dave Canales on the offensive side of the football for Carolina's defense to get this unit to the postseason, because this defense is going to be non-existent. The offense has to carry this defense on their back. And it's a shame, because Ejiro Evero, I feel, is a really good defensive coordinator, but the Panthers aren't really giving him that much to work with, especially in the secondary, when you have J.C. Horn and a bunch of Dollar General workers beside him at the other cornerback spots. When you have run-stopping safeties that struggle defending the pass over the top, it's going to be slim pickings, easy pickings for Baker Mayfield and Michael Penix when you play up against them. I have a hard time seeing the Panthers making it to the playoffs unless Bryce Young just completely plays out of his freaking mind. And if the Panthers make it to the playoffs, then Bryce Young has to win MVP because that's the only way the Panthers become a playoff team. They need Bryce Young to play MVP football. Bryce Young has to be completely flawless for the Panthers to win a lot of games this year. Hell, when Bryce Young played his best football after he got benched last season against the Kansas City Chiefs, who lost that game? Not Bryce Young, the defense did. When Bryce Young played decent against the Philadelphia Eagles, the defense couldn't hold up their end of the bargain. There were hella games that the Panthers lost when Bryce Young finally had his come to the NFL moment and it all started to click for him, that the defense failed him, and the Panthers defense has already failed Bryce Young, and the season hasn't even started because they still have major holes on this defense. You pretty much are crossing your fingers and praying to the Lord in the heavens above that the guys you have at corner, the guys that you're going to be dependent on to get consistent pressure on the quarterback, are going to be good enough to help out this team to be a potential participant in football in the second week in January. And I don't think that's going to happen. The Panthers, to me, have the upside to be a playoff team if this defense clicked, but the chances of this defense being good enough to be a playoff team is the same chances me, you, and everybody else have of winning a scratch-off ticket at the corner store for over $100,000. Slim to none. It's going to take a lot out of Bryce Young to get Carolina to the playoffs this year. I still think that this franchise is a year away from being a playoff team. They have so many holes on defense that are going to get exploited this year. It's hard to see them going that far this season. I don't know what's worse, Cam Newton's fashion sense, dressing like he's the founding fathers when they wrote the American Constitution, or his top 10 quarterback rankings entering this season, because he doesn't have Jalen Hurts included on it. And Jalen Hurts, to me, is a top 6 quarterback or better. Rather you want to put him at 2, 6, anywhere along that, I have no issues with. Jalen Hurts may not be one of the more talented quarterbacks in the league, but what makes him elite is that he plays consistently high-level football in the biggest games and always shines in the biggest moments. If you put Justin Herbert or Jared Goff on last year's Eagles team, I doubt that they win the Super Bowl because those guys make too many mistakes with the football and they don't play good in the playoffs. There's a reason why Jared Goff got shipped off by Sean McVay for his career to die in Detroit in exchange for Matthew Stafford. Do you find it ironic how the first season Matthew Stafford replaced Jared Goff, he won a Super Bowl? Well, Cam Newton says Jalen Hurts isn't a game changer. He benefited off having a great supporting cast, but Jared Goff didn't. It's not as if Jared Goff didn't play on a team that had 6 Pro Bowlers, which is 6 All-Pros, which is just as much as what the Philadelphia Eagles and the Baltimore Ravens had last year. It's not as if he didn't have the NFL's best offensive coordinators and Ben Johnson calling plays for him for the past 2 seasons. It's not as if Jared Goff threw 3 interceptions in the Detroit Lions' disappointing divisional round playoff loss against the Washington Commanders. So how is it that Jalen Hurts in Cam Newton's eyes isn't viewed as a game changer at quarterback, but Jared Goff is? His argument against Jalen Hurts being a top 10 quarterback is extremely idiotic, and it makes no sense to me that a guy who has played in the NFL for nearly a decade, that has been able to win an MVP, he's been to multiple Pro Bowls, he won a national championship in college and a Heisman, his football acumen is this bad with this top 10 ranking. Why is Baker Mayfield over Jalen Hurts? The hell has Baker Mayfield done in the playoffs? We just saw Justin Herbert throw 4 interceptions the last time he was on the field. He saved his best football for the regular season and his worst football for the playoffs. Jalen Hurts, without a doubt, is a top 10 quarterback, and he's the definition of what an elite quarterback is. Every quarterback that has won a Super Bowl has played with great players. You cannot win a championship unless you have great players around you. Now, the better quarterback you are, the more you're able to elevate your team despite having certain deficiencies, like when Joe Burrow took the Cincinnati Bengals to the Super Bowl 3 years ago, having the worst offensive line in the NFL during that season. He was able to overcome the limitation of his offensive line being bad. But Jalen Hurts isn't no slouch. Jalen Hurts is still one of the best dual-threat quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. Nobody gives him enough credit for how good of a runner he is. He gets talked about as if he's some kind of statue in the pocket, like he doesn't have any playmaking ability in his arsenal. Look, some of y'all view me as a Jalen Hurts hater because the way that Eagles fans hype this guy up like he's the best thing since sliced bread kind of irritates me a little bit. But I'm not going to penalize Jalen Hurts for being in the situation that every franchise should have their starting quarterback in. Why is it that Jalen Hurts is the only quarterback that gets penalized for being on a well-constructed team? Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen have all had great teams and have come up short of winning a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts has gone toe-to-toe with the greatest quarterback of this generation and has outplayed him in the Super Bowl twice. What has Jared Goff done in the playoffs? He's shrunk. He's shrunk against Tom Brady, which is ironic because Tom Brady is the only quarterback in the history of the NFL, not named Jalen Hurts, who has beaten Patrick Mahomes in the game of immortals. Why do we keep making it seem as if Jalen Hurts is some mediocre quarterback? The guy has one of the best deep balls in the NFL. The guy is a sensational athlete. The tush push is as effective as what it is because of Jalen Hurts being able to power lift 500 pounds. Cam Newton is being incredibly disingenuous to Jalen Hurts to the point where I question his football acumen. And that kind of proves my point when people get in the comment section of some of my videos and they say, oh, I can tell that you never played football. You don't need to play football to have enough common sense to know that Jalen Hurts is a top 10 quarterback. You don't need to play football to be able to talk about this game and spit facts. Because just because you play football doesn't necessarily mean that you have the highest understanding of the game. And Cam Newton is the prime example of that. For a quarterback that has had the career that he has had, with the amount of accomplishments that he has racked up, you would think that he would be higher on Jalen Hurts and have a little bit more common sense than to disrespect him by putting Justin Herbert over him, a guy who has routinely played his worst football in the biggest point of the season. What the hell is Jared Goff doing over Jalen Hurts, as if Jalen Hurts hasn't been way better in the playoffs than Jared Goff? The only quarterbacks on this list that are justified over being ranked over Jalen Hurts are Josh Allen, the young legend out of Pompano, Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Jaden Daniels. Those are the only 5 quarterbacks that I personally would take over Jalen Hurts. What makes Jalen Hurts elite is that in the playoffs, you always know that he's going to play his best football and he's not going to cost you games. Baker Mayfield had 16 interceptions last year, and his team lost to Jaden Daniels, a rookie quarterback. Justin Herbert had the best touchdown-interception ratio in the league and yet had 4 interceptions against the Houston Texans. Most people were calling C.J. Stroud a little bit overrated with how he was going in and out over the course of last season due to him in the midst of a sophomore slump. So I'm a little bit lost that Cam Newton, who has played this game at the highest of levels, that has had so much success, has had so many accolades, is this tone deaf to how good Jalen Hurts truly is. I don't need to see Jalen Hurts surrounded by scrubs to know that he's an elite quarterback. No good quarterback can win a Super Bowl without having high-level players around him. And if you put Cam Newton on last year's Eagles team, there's no guarantee that they win the Super Bowl. Cam Newton, you were never anywhere as good throwing the football as what Jalen Hurts was. Be honest, you were a sub 59% completion guy. Jalen Hurts has already surpassed you in terms of throwing ability. Yeah, you were a freak of nature at 6'6", 255 pounds, but you're that big and you couldn't dive on the football in Super Bowl 50, my dude? Come on now. Yeah, I'll take Jalen Hurts over Cam Newton any day of the week outside of 2015 Cam Newton. But even then, even at your best, you still came up short because at least Jalen Hurts has the heart of a champion. At least he's not going to be scared to dive on the football in the biggest game of his career, unlike you were. At least he didn't call out his teammates, calling them scrubs, like you didn't have Steve Smith, who was still in his prime when you got to Carolina. I like Cam Newton a lot, but this take right here was insanity to me, and I just expect more for a guy that played football at such a high level as what Cam Newton did for the majority of his career. He has to be the ultimate Jalen Hurts hater at this point. There's a lot of talk about how Lamar Jackson has no more excuses not to win the Super Bowl anymore with the God squad that the Ravens have assembled this year, when it should be John Harbaugh has no more excuses anymore for the Ravens not being able to win another Super Bowl under him, because John Harbaugh has been blessed with the most talented quarterback to ever put his hands on a football. I keep telling you guys, the way Lamar throws the football is Tom Brady-like. And the way he toasts that rock is like prime Barry Sanders. And yet John Harbaugh continuously fails Lamar in the playoffs because he allows the Ravens to be their biggest enemy. The only thing that has stopped the Ravens from winning Lamar Jackson the Super Bowl that he so much deserves is that the team around him always finds ways to fail him. If it wasn't for the Mark Andrews drop 2-point conversion, the Zay Flowers fumble 2 years ago in the AFC Championship on the 1-yard line against the Kansas City Chiefs, if it wasn't for Todd Monken forgetting that he has good running backs on the roster, Lamar Jackson would have already had a Super Bowl ring on one of his 5 fingers. John Harbaugh is on the clock this year. Everybody wants to say that the Steelers need to fire Mike Tomlin for coming up short in the playoffs. Lamar Jackson has put more pressure on John Harbaugh this year than what he's ever been under. And we seem to forget that the sole reason why John Harbaugh still has a job is because Lamar Jackson saved him from getting fired during his rookie season when he took over for Joe Flacco. And for the people who say that Mike Tomlin needs to get fired because he continues to come up short in the playoffs, Mike Tomlin doesn't have a Lamar at quarterback. John Harbaugh does. And when you have an elite quarterback talent, then you have an opportunity to win the Super Bowl every single season. So why isn't that John Harbaugh has been unable to get Lamar one? It's crazy to me how Lamar Jackson is the only person on the Ravens that gets blamed for this team's shortcomings in the playoffs, but John Harbaugh is able to slip and slide and juke and jive his way from criticism as if he isn't, if not more responsible for the Ravens' playoff collapses than what Lamar Jackson is. The team embodies the personality and characteristics as their head coach. The further you go in the playoffs, the more that you need elite high-level coaching to win. You want to know why the Kansas City Chiefs have continued to dominate the AFC for as long as what they have? Because they are well coached and they are buttoned up. John Harbaugh and the Ravens are the complete opposite than what the Chiefs are. When the Chiefs get in the playoffs, they don't beat themselves. They make other teams beat themselves, and they capitalize off it. And the Ravens, on the other hand, teams beat them because they capitalize off the Ravens' mistakes. So if you are saying that the Steelers need to get tired of selling for mediocrity of Mike Tomlin, then you need to hold that same energy for John Harbaugh continuing to fail with one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever put his hands on the football. You have this generational quarterback who's like a 99 overall quarterback. Lamar Jackson is the closest thing that this league will get to a perfect quarterback in terms of throwing the football and running the football. He can do every single thing. There is no weakness in Lamar Jackson's game. So why is it that John Harbaugh hasn't been able to win with him? Don't compare Lamar to Joe Flacco. We know that if we had to choose between Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson, who everybody with a functioning brain that works halfway decent is taken, you are tanking the young legend out of Pompano every single time. The reason why Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl was because he had a team that didn't fall apart around him. You had a bunch of veterans like Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs. You had guys that didn't have all of these stupid self-inflicted errors, guys who are able to come through in the biggest moment. Let's not forget that overtime playoff game that the Ravens won against Peyton Manning during that Super Bowl run that they had in 2012. That team showed up in crucial moments. The Ravens with Lamar, on the other hand, they don't show up in crucial moments. They go MIA when Lamar needs his team to step up the most. Lamar put the Ravens in position to beat the Buffalo Bills. But it's not as if Lamar Jackson can play pump, pass out there with the way that he gets criticized. You would think that Lamar's out there throwing the ball, throwing it to himself, playing defense. He's calling the plays too. The Ravens just forget who they are in the playoffs. If you put Mike Tomlin on the Baltimore Ravens, they would have already won a Super Bowl, because the only thing that is holding back Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh is that he doesn't have a god at quarterback like how John Harbaugh has with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, he had the opportunity to get Lamar Jackson, and he passed on him for Terrell freaking Edmonds. And to this day, I would never forgive the Pittsburgh Steelers for that. I was disgusted when this team passed on Lamar Jackson for Terrell Edmonds, and I still can't get over it. Every time I see Lamar on the other sideline when the Steelers play him, I get jealous, because he should be playing in the black and gold. And I don't give a flipping F about what the Steelers do against the Ravens in a regular season, because the hell does that get Pittsburgh in the postseason? Nowhere. John Harbaugh is on the clock this year. If he doesn't win the Super Bowl, the Ravens need to kick this brother to the curb, because he is holding back the greatness of Lamar Jackson. All Lamar Jackson needs is one Super Bowl to become the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. He'll be better than Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, John Elway, Joe Montana, because we've never seen a quarterback that throws the ball like Tom Brady and runs the football like he's Barry Sanders in his prime. Lamar Jackson is the perfect quarterback. If he wins a ring, he will be the greatest of all time. But he's going to have a hard time doing that when he has to overcome John Harbaugh not having this team buttoned up and ready to play come playoff time. When are the Ravens going to start holding John Harbaugh accountable for this franchise continuous shortcomings under Lamar Jackson? Because before Lamar Jackson got to Baltimore, every Ravens fan was at John Harbaugh's neck. Lamar has saved John Harbaugh, but now it's time for John Harbaugh to start carrying the load, because Lamar Jackson has been doing it all by himself. You can only win if you have elite coaching. You want to know why elite quarterbacks like Lamar can't win Super Bowls unless they have good coaching, but elite coaches can win Super Bowls with guys like Trent Dilfer, Brad Johnson at quarterback? It's because elite coaches can elevate average quarterbacks, but an elite quarterback cannot elevate a team with average to slightly above average coaching, which we've seen out of Jim Harbaugh every time the Ravens get to the Super Bowl. Eventually, the Ravens are going to have to look at themselves in the mirror, and they're going to have to say, you know what? We can't continue to allow this to slide. We can't continue to allow John Harbaugh to waste a generational talent that the NFL will never see again. There are no more excuses for John Harbaugh this year. You have as stacked as a team as what you will ever have. He needs to get Lamar Jackson a Super Bowl. And if not, and the Ravens come up short once again with this team, John Harbaugh has to get fired. Every year in the NFL, there's always a team that everybody expects to suck that ends up making it to the playoffs. Last year, it was the Denver Broncos and the Washington Commanders. The year before that, it was the Houston Texans with C.J. Stroud and D'Amico Ryans, their first season there. This year, the sleeper team that everybody expects to be bad, that's going to make it to the playoffs possibly, is going to be the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans have Cam Ward, who is the most disrespected number 1 overall pick in the history of the NFL. It was disgraceful and distasteful that ESPN only gave this brother 2 seconds of screen time, ruining his moment in favor of propping up Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, when Cam Ward was the best thing to happen to Miami football since the early 2000s. In his single season in South Florida, he broke all of Miami's single season passing records. Cam Ward is the truth. You don't go from being a 0-star recruit out of high school to the first overall pick if there wasn't something special about you. Cam Ward balled out at 3 different schools. At Incarnate Ward, he was the best player in FCS. Then he transfers to a higher level of competition at Washington State and becomes one of the best quarterbacks in the Pac-12. Then he transfers to Miami to improve his draft stock for one more season, playing even more difficult competition, and becomes the best quarterback in all of college football. You don't have that rapid amount of growth and development if there wasn't a special trait about you. And what's special about Cam Ward is that he just has this aura around him that guys want to run through a brick wall for him. His receivers that he's going to be throwing to are going to get elevated, and they're going to be better than what they truly are, because he's that kind of quarterback that brings the best out of everybody that he plays with. Cam Ward, to me, is already a borderline top 10 quarterback without playing a single snap. Quarterbacks that have had dominant rookie seasons like Jaden Daniels, Justin Herbert, and Bo Nix, what they all have had in common with Cam Ward is that they played for 3-4 years in college football as starting quarterbacks at that level. So therefore, the transition to the league was more easier for them with the amount of experience that they got before taking a single snap at this level. The Tennessee Titans last season had a great defense that was held back by a terrible quarterback play. If it wasn't for Mason Rudolph being average, and then Will Levis being Santa's helper, especially in the red zone, taking points off the board for this team, Will Levis by himself costed the Tennessee Titans 3-4 games that they easily could have won, but they didn't because of how loosey-goosey he was with the football. You're not going to have a quarterback in Cam Ward that hurts the team that way. You're not going to have a quarterback that you had to avoid putting the ball in his hands because you don't trust him to make the right decision. He may have a few turnovers here and there because he tries to do too much, because he plays a lot of hero ball. But if you're the Tennessee Titans, you can live with those kinds of mistakes because you can learn from them. And the Titans have a pretty good supporting cast around Cam Ward. They have what should be a really good offensive line because they have one of the better offensive line coaches in the NFL and Bill Callahan. They have an underrated group of wide receivers. Calvin Ridley, if you ask any receiver in the NFL right now to name their top 5 receivers, they're going to have Calvin Ridley either on that list or honorable mention that they make sure to bring up. Calvin Ridley last season had 1,000 yards receiving with Mason Rudolph and Will Levis being his starting quarterback. So imagine what he can do with a way better quarterback and Cam Ward. They have elite Iron Manner, a.k.a. the Travis Hunter Destroyer. He put up 200 yards and 2 touchdowns on Travis Hunter a few years ago. He's going to be a great playmaker. You have Cam Ward's tag team partner from Miami and Xavier Restrepo. Then they also have Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears, who are a really underrated 1-2 punch duo at running back. And as long as Cam Ward can play good football, this defense should play at a top 13 level or better. And you possibly could see the Tennessee Titans in the playoffs this year when nobody expects them to be. The AFC South is not good. The Houston Texans have an elite defense, a way better defense than the Tennessee Titans, but their offense is a lot to be desired. We don't know how good the Texans' offensive line is going to be. Texans fans can say that it's going to be improved, but you don't know that for sure because you thought last year was going to be improved. You have a new offensive coordinator. Is he going to be an upgrade from Bobby Slowick? He should be, but how big of an upgrade is he going to be? So for as many questions that we have about the Tennessee Titans and how good this offense is going to be with Cam Ward, we have just as many questions about the Houston Texans. And the Titans are a little bit ahead of the Texans because their offensive line is a little bit better. Their wide receiving core is a lot more proven. Yeah, we know that. We are all taking Nico Collins over Calvin Ridley, but the other guys that they have behind them, I mean, who else do they have behind Nico Collins down there in Houston? So the same questions that you can have about the Titans, you can have about the Texans offense too. The Titans are laughing at everybody that thinks that they're just going to be some stepping stool for the AFC South to put their weight on when that couldn't be further from the truth. The Titans are a team that nobody sees coming because this is an underrated team. Cam Ward is going to give them top 10 level quarterback play. There's just something special about this guy. I remember first watching him at Incarnate Word in the FCS Championship, and I watched a lot of him at Washington State. And when he came to Miami, that's when I had my best year ever as a Miami Hurricane fan, because for the first time in my 12 years being a Miami fan, I felt like Miami actually had a chance to compete at the highest level of college football again because of the impact of Cam Ward. There's just something infectious about his energy. It's like when you just look at Cam Ward, he's one of those guys that you don't want to doubt, because if you do, he's going to prove you wrong. And I saw the same thing with Jalen Hurts. When he came out of college, you just knew that he was going to win due to all the adversity that he had to overcome. As I said earlier, nobody goes from being a no-star recruit with pretty much no Division I FBS offers at all to becoming a number 1 overall pick if there wasn't something special about them. Warren Moon didn't unretire that number 1 jersey for no reason. You want to know why Warren Moon unretired his jersey for Cam Ward? Because he sees a lot of himself in Cam Ward. They were underlooked coming out of high school. They had to jump around in college football to prove themselves. And even when Warren Moon got an opportunity, a lot of people still didn't believe in him. He had to prove himself in the CFL for years, dominating that league to finally get an opportunity to dominate in the NFL. And just like how people disrespected the talent of Warren Moon, they are doing the same thing with Cam Ward. But the disrespected will eventually be the respected because of how good Cam Ward is going to be. I don't give a damn if he's going up against the Denver Broncos in week 1. Cam Ward shouldn't be scared of the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos should be scared of Cam Ward because they don't know the kind of dog that they're walking into the cage with week 1 when they step on the field and they see that demon from Texas that is Cam Timothy Ward. They don't know about the aura that this brother has. They don't know about how his teammates are going to be ready to go to war for him. There's an energy that Cam Ward has that is just undescribable that the NFL doesn't have the ability to sense because they were too worried being overly invested in glazing Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. And I love both of those guys, but Cam Ward is going to make the NFL pay for disrespecting him in the NFL draft. don't be shocked if the Titans win the AFC South and they get into the playoffs this year because of how good Cam Ward is going to be. His rookie season will be just as good as what you saw out of Jaden Daniels last year.